We stand surrounded. We are not alone. Within my a Norfolk night, the world is cold. We stand surrounded. We are not alone. Within my reverie, there's holy light. Without a number, we stand and fight. A Norfolk night, the world is cold. We stand surrounded. We are not alone. Within my reverie, there's holy light. Without a number, we stand and fight. Oh, 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 we are not alone. Oh, we are not alone.
Welcome back, everybody, to Immortal Shadows. I am your host, the
I
paranormal
can't hear
pastor,
you.
Ezekiel Kincaid. You can't hear me? Can everybody else hear
You're
me?
muted.
I'm not muted. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Bethany? I think we may be having some audio trouble. Hey, PW, can you hear me? Okay, all right. Something must be going on with Bethany. She's saying she can't hear me. So we'll see if she can come back up and we'll get that technical difficulty worked out. So welcome everybody back to the show. Hey, Tigers, welcome. I had a long hiatus, so I am glad to be back. What's up, Dustin? All right, I'm gonna pull Bethany back up. Bethany, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
You can hear me. Okay. All right, good deal. I don't know what was going on there for a second. I had trouble when I hit the live stream to start. It kept saying there was an error. I guess it's been so long since I've been on. It's kind of like, who's this guy back here? AMK Gaming and Dot, welcome to the chat. Thank y'all for coming to hang out with us this Sunday evening. We're streaming live on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. So everybody out there on social media, a big hello. Thank you for coming to join us and hanging out with us this evening as we pick back up our study in the book of Revelation. So from here on out, unless something changes, Immortal Shadows is going to be back on Sunday night. And Southern Discomfort will be back this coming week on its normal time on Tuesday night. So we're back in the swing of things on Sunday nights and Tuesday nights every week, coming at you. Immortal Shadows, we're sticking with our theme of talking about more spiritual topics. I'm going to finish going through the book of Revelation. And Southern Discomfort is going to be mainly paranormal focused, like always. So nothing much has changed. We're jumping back in. Same show that you are used to, covering a lot of various topics and cool stuff that you usually don't normally hear. So I'm glad to be back. And with me, I have my lovely fiance, my blondie, Bethany. Hello.
Yes.
Yes. So she is back with us as well. And the thing about Bethany too is, you should know, is she is the queen of picking out the best YouTube clips ever and sending them to me. Isn't that right, Bethany? You have no comment. Bethany.
You know what? Considering the really asinine things that entertain you, you have no room to talk at all whatsoever.
Yeah, Dustin, you should Bethany's on a roll. You should see these.
No, it was a good show. You just don't like British humor, and that's evident.
No, I do. I love Monty
No,
Python
you
and stuff
don't.
like that. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. It's not my fault that the thing you picked was not funny.
It was funny.
No, it wasn't. Send it
Yes,
to
it was.
Dustin.
No,
Send
you
it to
just wanted to
Dustin.
have material for the show.
No, send it to Dustin. Let's see what he says.
Why would I say it? It wouldn't matter because even if it were funny, he's just going to back you up. Like,
Maybe.
I'm not stupid. Jeez.
Maybe not.
Maybe
If it was really funny.
You know what?
I
Okay,
wouldn't
here's
have
the
laughed.
truth. I don't want to hear one word. You have made me sit through some of the dumbest freaking movies out there and been like, you just bail on things. You have the attention span of goldfish. You will stay in with movies way longer than you should that are god awful. I don't want to hear it.
I provide our movie nights with high quality entertainment.
No, you don't. These are some of the
Nothing
worst
less.
movies. Like they would show them in prisons to torture people. These are awful.
Nothing less than the best coming from Zeke, as always. Hey, Bud Files, welcome to the chat. Thanks for coming to hang out with us. Yeah, see, Dustin says he tells you funny jokes and you laugh.
No, I don't. They're stupid and awful. God. He sent me one today about reading a horror story with Braille, and I'm just like, I just feel like driving my car keys into my temple. These are so stupid.
Well, you know, Dustin, that's not too far from the truth because Bethany almost went blind.
Stop it.
And I sent her a
God.
bunch of Braille jokes. Okay, y'all remember the big eclipse we had? When was
Okay,
that,
here's
back
the
in
thing.
April?
All right. When I admit I can be a little bit of a hypochondriac. You do not help, you do not support, you do not give comfort. You will take it and run with it. I stepped on a piece of metal and I'm like, oh my gosh, what if it's rusted? And he had me convinced that I had tetanus, that I was going to lose my foot.
No, you said that. You were like, I've got tetanus.
I said, what if there's rust on it? And you said, well, then you're going to lose the foot.
No, you were paranoid about tetanus, and I just ran with it and said we're gonna have to amputate your foot. And no, before that, okay, with the eclipse, like the
I
eclipse.
glanced up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was really bright. What if I did eye damage? And you were like, yes, you're blind. You're totally blind, and I'll love you anyway, and you're blind.
Yeah, she walks by and she looks at the window, okay, just the window. And she
No, I was
me,
outside.
like,
No, to be fair, I was outside. No.
you were freaking out and you're like, oh my gosh, the rays of the sun, hit me or something like that. And I'm going to be blind. What if I'm blind?
You are
So
exaggerating this and over dramatizing.
I was like, yeah, you're going to be blind. And so I started sending her links to books to learn Braille since she was going to be blind.
You have as much sympathy and compassion as a butcher knife.
Well,
I mean,
the stuff you say is like outlandish, like you're gonna go blind because the rays of the sun from the eclipse pass by you.
well, excuse me for being just a little bit of a hypochondriac. Good thing you weren't around me when I was pregnant. You would have ended up just driving me into the middle of nowhere and leaving me there.
I'm sure I would have. Hey, Kenneth, welcome. Thanks for coming to hang out with us Sunday night on Immortal Shadows. So just to give everybody a little update, and then Emma's going to come up here and sing a couple songs for y'all. The reason I had to take a hiatus is I had to move out of the current house that I was in, and into a new one and get settled, and also started a new job as a hospice chaplain. And so all that transition and change, I needed to make sure that I just got settled before I jumped back into the show. So that's what was going on with me for the past couple months. And during that time, I had several books and stories released. So I'm just going to update you on that. This is the one I'm most proud of. All right. This is the Tetramet tapes, and this is a found footage style horror story about some young boys who find some VHS tapes in their creepy old neighbor's trash can. And they end up watching what's on the tapes, and it leads them down a rabbit hole of investigating an urban legend about a cult. And they end up going out to try to find out if these urban legends are real. And it all ends very, very horribly. So this one, if you like very just creepy, unsettling horror, this one is not overly gory. There is some gore in there for sure, especially when they watch the tapes and then in the end of the story. So there is some in there, but it's not overly violent like some of my stuff is at times. This one is definitely a very creepy, atmospheric one. And then I had some Southern Discomfort issues release. This one is called The Tetramet, and this story is on Godless, and it is actually the expanded story of one of the clips that the boys from the Tetramet tapes watch on one of the VHS cassettes. So this one links with this one. You can get this one on Godless. Also had another one drop in April. This one is called Bone Box. Again, this one is more of a creepy, unsettling, atmospheric one that has to do with New Orleans and voodoo. It follows Nevia as she is seeking a little more than some of the touristy style voodoo that is in her hometown of New Orleans. And she goes to an abandoned school and finds a high priestess. And in this high priestess little collectible shop that she has, Nevia discovers this box made out of bones and buys it and brings it back to her home. And she ends up opening the box, and you'll just have to see what happens. But of course, it's horror, so it is never good to open the box. And then my latest is a full-on exorcism story. This was May's edition, The Exorcism of Ezra Fogg, and then part 2 is dropping on June 7th. This story is written like the old school style penny dreadfuls from the late 1800s. It follows Father Silas Fletcher in England as he is investigating a case of possession at Manchester Monastery. And if you've seen the movie The Pope's Exorcist, and if you've seen the movie Hellhole on Netflix, this is like a mashup of those with some very interesting demons that I've created and creatures that are involved. It's not your typical exorcism story. It starts out that way, but it goes in a different direction and an ending, and things happen that aren't usually included in possession style stories. So there is some originality to this one. So if you love possession style stories, this one obviously being a possession story, there is some body horror in it, along with some creatures and some creature horrors as well, but some very intense possession scenes in there. So if that's your jam, then you want to check out The Exorcism of Ezra Fogg. I think that's it, huh, Bethany?
Yes, I do believe so. So do we want to do any Because before we started the show, we briefly discussed some different kind of personal things. Do we want to talk about that now or after you do the readings?
No, we can do that when I get into the teaching part. It'll fit better with that.
Okay, you drive.
All right. Hey, Crossover, welcome to the chat. Thank you for coming to hang out with us for Immortal Shadows. So, all right. With all of that out the way, we're going to go ahead and get kicked off, and I'm going to let Emma come up here and do her musical thing.
It is what I do. Okay. I'm back. Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see. That's my cat. Beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, oh so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to the earth you created, all for love's sake became poor. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. 'Cause I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. So I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. That was Here I Am to Worship. And then this one is The Goodness of God, which is also a favorite. sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You led me through the fire in darkest night. You were close like no other. I've known you as a father, known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running, it keeps running after me. When my life's laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. 'Cause your goodness is running, it keeps running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running, it's still running after me. When my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. It's your goodness is running, it keeps running after me. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. Glasses. You show Penny. Yeah, this is who was screaming for the first half.
Ugh.
Yeah, speaking of Penny Dreadfuls,
Yeah, so we got a new kitten.
this is Penny.
This
Yep.
is Penny Dreadful.
Or Emma's baby, as I call it.
Yep.
She's a good dog, though.
This is her. You
She
say
was
hi?
crying for her mama.
No, literally. I'm not allowed to leave the room without her, apparently.
There's your baby.
Yeah. So
I've watched the. You guys
strap.
don't get it. I've watched that little kitty climb on top of Emma, like climb up her so she would pick her up.
Up my neck.
Yep.
That's her baby.
Yeah, they all said thank you, Emma, and that you did awesome.
You always do, baby.
Yeah, thank y'all for encouraging her and supporting her. So we're going to go ahead and get into the teaching part of tonight and get back into the book of Revelation. Now, it's been several months since we've looked at this book, so just want to remind you of a couple things that I mentioned almost every show. So I want to reiterate those. First of all, Revelation is an historical book, right? It was written to 7 churches. So we have to take the historical context into account when interpreting the book. The second thing is it is steeped in Old Testament imagery, right? John takes a lot of Old Testament themes and images, and he kind of mashes them together. And what we'll see, especially in our passage tonight, he takes several things from the Old Testament and pushes them all together to form a symbolism. And we'll talk about what that symbolism means here in a little bit. And the other thing, when the book of Revelation, as elsewhere in the New Testament, when it mentions the last days, it is not talking about this future period or this future 7-year tribulation period. When the book of Revelation mentions the last days, drawing that from the Old Testament book of Daniel, Paul mentions the last days, the book of Acts mentions the last days. All of that is referring to the time period that started after the death and resurrection of Jesus. So the book of Revelation is not this solely futuristic book that is meant to tell about things that are far off in the distant future. It had meaning and application to John's original audience, and it has meaning and application to us today and for future generations, right? The book of Revelation represents what happens during the whole church age, from the death and resurrection of Jesus all the way to his return. So these are some underlying themes and assumptions that I am going with and that I have every week. And so I wanted to just kind of throw that back out there before we get back into this this book that can be very, very difficult to understand and interpret. Hey, Elaine, welcome to the chat. Thank you for coming to join us. So we're going to take 2 weeks to look at the supernatural witnesses of the book of Revelation that are found in Revelation chapter 11. Now, if there are those of you who like I said, a lot of times with the book of Revelation, you get what's pushed out there in the media and pushed out there in the mainstream. And when it comes to the 2 supernatural witnesses, a lot of times this is presented as, these 2 people are going to come down from heaven and they're going to be breathing real fire from their mouth, and they're going to be preaching the gospel and all these things. And a lot of times people will say that the 2 witnesses were Moses and Elijah, or Elijah and Enoch. And we're going to look at that viewpoint a little bit. But like I said, I don't think that viewpoint is correct. We got to look at the symbolism that John takes here out of the Old Testament, and see what he's getting at and what it represents. And then I'm going to make a few application points with this particular passage. So in chapter 11, the last show we did was on this vision of the temple. And we talked about how the temple represented the church, and the persecution, the trampling of the courts of the Gentiles was going to represent the persecution. So John switches out of that imagery of the temple, and then picking up in verse 3, he gives us some new imagery. So for tonight, we're going to look at verses 3 through 6. And then next week, as we continue to study the 2 supernatural witnesses, we're going to do verses 7 through 14. So here is what John records. And I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. Now, keep that in mind, lampstands. If you think about lampstands, going back to our earlier studies in the book, that should bring your memory back to the 7 churches and seeing Jesus walk among the lampstands. And we talked about how the lampstands were representative of the church. So this should clue you in right here about what this imagery represents. They are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. If anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from their mouths and devours their enemies. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. These men have power to shut up the sky so that it will not rain during the time of their prophesying, and they have power to turn the water into blood and to strike the earth and every kind of plague as often as they want. So, first of all, we're going to try to identify who these witnesses are and what they present. John immediately starts off with some Old Testament imagery. He talks about the 2 olive trees and 2 lampstands. And this is, he's going back to the prophetic book of Zechariah. In chapter 4, Zechariah the prophet, these imageries represented Joshua the high priest and Zerubbabel. And these 2 guys, the city had been trampled by the Gentiles, and these 2 men were put in charge of kind of restoring things. When you go back and look at that time period, a lot of what the smaller prophetic books cover and the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, these are all taking place after the destruction of Israel and Jerusalem in this time of rebuilding. And this is when the book of Zechariah is written and when Zechariah did his prophecies. So Zerubbabel and Joshua were who these original imagery was talking about. And this lampstand in the book of Zechariah, it was the source of the Spirit. Now, we can't say that this imagery in Revelation 11 is referencing the Spirit of God, right? Because the Spirit of God is not going to, we're going to see the 2 witnesses die in the street and stuff like that. So this doesn't really fit anything that would describe the Holy Spirit. So we have to kind of go another way with this. We see other Old Testament imagery in here. We see calling, like they have fire coming out of their mouths. If you go back to the Old Testament, the prophet Elijah, and this is why some people think that it could be Elijah coming back, because Elijah, when he goes in the book of 1 Kings and he confronts all these prophets of Baal who are leading the Israelites into child sacrifice and all of these detestable deeds, he confronts them on this mountain. He prepares this sacrifice and he calls fire down from heaven. But we can see the imagery, though it's reminiscent of Elijah, it's a little different because the fire is not coming out of heaven, but the fire is going out of the witness's mouth. We see other Old Testament imagery, water turning into blood, sending other plagues. Remember in the past, just kind of to renew your mind of what we had spoken about in the past. We talked about the Passover and the Exodus, and the plagues play a big part in John's symbolism here in the book of Revelation. And we see it here again. He's referring back to Moses and the plagues with the blood and the other things that happened during that time period. And so all of these symbols John draws on to make a point. But we see, and this is why a lot of scholars say that this can't be Moses and Elijah per se, because though the imagery is reminiscent of them, it is not of them word for word, right? Fire comes out of the mouth. Elijah called fire down from heaven. So it's, and then you have that imagery mixing with the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands. So what John is doing is he's reaching over here in Zechariah and taking this imagery of Joshua and Zerubbabel, of them standing before the Lord. And then he's going over here with Elijah, who was a mighty prophet, and also with Moses, who was a leader and a prophet. So we look at this imagery, right? Joshua, the high priest. John is drawing on a high priest imagery. And then he's also drawing on the kingly imagery because Zerubbabel was a king. And then he's drawing on prophetic imagery, which was Elijah in Moses. So he's bringing all this together. And elsewhere in the New Testament, we see the church, God's people, referred to a kingdom of priests or kings and priests, not in a worldly sense, but in the sense that we rule and reign with Christ because he has freed us from sin, and we can live free from those things, and that in the age to come, we will experience that true freedom as sons and daughters of God. And he draws on the prophetic imagery to talk about the witness and testimony of God's people, that they are to be bold and prophetic and truthful in their witness. So he takes all of this imagery and he's bringing it together in this symbolism to talk about the church and representing the church in this way. Now, there were early church fathers who thought that this was referring to Enoch and Elijah, or Moses and Elijah. People like Tertullian and Jerome, they were some of the first ones who were big proponents of this actually being Elijah and Moses, or Elijah and Enoch, right? Because if you look back at Enoch, he was taken up to heaven in the book of Genesis. Those of you who have been keeping up with this show for a while, we went through the book of Enoch, and I taught out of that first section of it. And there was Jewish tradition too that mentioned Enoch coming back. And then there was also Jewish tradition that Moses didn't really die. That view that it is Elijah and Enoch, or Moses and Elijah coming back, it's really not that far-fetched, but it's not the best way to interpret this imagery, especially when we see how John is pulling bits and pieces of it all together to describe these two supernatural witnesses. Now, why would he pick the number 2? In Jewish tradition, a testimony was considered valid if it came from the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. You also see in the Gospels that when Jesus sent out his disciples to minister, he sent them off in pairs of 2. And so this idea of 2 or 3 witnesses speaking to establish something is a very biblical imagery, and this is why John uses this number 2. So looking at that and how it represents the church, right? We also have the lampstand imagery, which elsewhere in Revelation I said is a depiction of the church. I mentioned Joshua and Zerubbabel, a high priest and a king, a kingdom of priests, and what the New Testament calls the church. And they prophesy. They are witnessing. It says here that they have a testimony. They're witnessing of the death and resurrection of Christ. And this time period in that they witness in the 1,260 days. Again, when we've gone back and looked at that imagery, and that number is not a literal number, it's symbolic. It's meant to represent the whole church age, right? So these witnesses, the church is representing the church's witness from the death and resurrection of Christ all the way to his return. And this idea here with the fire coming out and being able to shut up the heavens and plagues and stuff like that, it's not meant to say that fire's really, the church really going to spit fire out of our mouth and we really have power to turn, the water into blood, and, we can call all this God's wrath down upon people and things like that. That's not what John is getting at. The fire imagery here, this goes back to the book of Jeremiah, where he talks about God's word being a fire shut up in his bones, and he's weary from holding it back. And what it represents is the power of God's spoken word, the power of the gospel. And this idea here of the plagues and things like that, it gives the imagery that the church is going to be able to continue their witness, that nothing can stop the advancement of God's kingdom. And so there's this great responsibility that is put upon the people of God with all of the imagery that is in the Old Testament. Now, I want to make a few application points here, right? We have this powerful imagery of what the church and God's people is supposed to be. This witness for Christ, this powerful, strong force of good in the world and of truth. And you have that imagery of the two witnesses. This is the ideal. But then when you go back and you look at the beginning of the book of Revelation and you look at some of the letters that was written to some of the churches and some of the horrible things that were going on in there, like you have the church at Ephesus, they had totally forsaken their love of God and their love for people. You had the church of Thyatira that had totally forsaken all truth, and they were just letting whoever come in and teach whatever, and the people were blindly following whatever was presented to them. Then you had the church of Laodicea, which they were rich and they were so comfortable in all of their prosperity. But Jesus said, you are really a wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. And all of these churches that had these immense sins going on in them, Jesus told them that if you do not repent, I will come snuff out your lamp. And so John is bringing his readers forward to this imagery to say, this is what you should look like as a believer, as a Christian, as the church, right? You should not be corrupted by the world and the world system, because it's this world system that is going to come against the people of God. That's what we're going to see with the beast that comes out of the sea and the false prophet that is possessed by the spirit of Satan and the Antichrist. You have that dichotomy going on, right? The two and the two. You have the beast and the false prophet coming up, and then you have the two supernatural witnesses. And we're going to see that the beast and the false prophet make war against the witnesses. They're going to kill them. Their bodies are going to lay in the street, and we'll get into all of that next week. And I often get, when I go through teaching this book, I get the question of, Zeke, the church in America, which church in Revelation do you think they more identify with? Like, how do you see the church in the United States? And my answer is threefold, and here is what I see going on. And if you're not a Christian, right, what I'm about to say is not really directed at you. This is directed. This particular part I'm going to say is directed at those who claim the name of Christ, who claim to be a part of Him and believe in Him. I see it threefold. I see the church in America. There is a part of God's people that are like the church in Ephesus. They are full of religion. They have no love. They have no grace. They're angry. They're bitter. They're hateful. They're mean-spirited. And they give the name of Christ a horrible name because of how they treat people outside of the church, of how they treat people with different beliefs than they have, of how they treat people of different sexual orientation. And I can go on. The amount of hatred that religion breeds is like no other. And the call of Christianity in the church is to preach the truth in love. And we are to extend love and grace and charity and respect and honor to all people, whether they agree with us or not. And a loveless church is a dead church, and it is anti-gospel, and it is anti-grace. because a religious spirit makes you think that you're better than everybody else. And that is anti-Christianity, because the thing is we are all sinners. We've all fallen short, and we've all been saved by grace. We brought nothing good to God. He's the one who brought every good thing to us. And so we cannot claim anything of ourselves. And a religious spirit makes a person prideful and puffed up, and to think that, they have accomplished something when it comes to God. When Jesus says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So we are called to love. We are called to love our enemies. We're called to pray for those who persecute us. So the church of Ephesus is what I see. Another aspect that hinders the church from being like the two supernatural witnesses is what happened in the church of Thyatira. In the church of Thyatira, they let all kinds of false teaching in. And they were listening to this woman who came in and said that she was a prophetess, and she was really a Jezebel. And if you hadn't read Jezebel's story in the book of Kings, you can go back and read that. But this idea of a Jezebel spirit is the spirit that is an ultimate rebellion against God, and not the rebellion and just saying no God, but it's a rebellion that says, I want to corrupt everything that is of God. And so this Jezebel spirit comes into the church in order to corrupt, and it can corrupt in many ways. It can corrupt in doctrine, to where people will just embrace everything under the sun in the name of Christianity and tolerance and all of that stuff, when Christianity is itself a belief system about God. And every religion, no matter what it is, it makes exclusive claims. You just can't get around that. Any type of religion, any type of spiritual system makes some sort of exclusive claim to say, no, this is the way, no, this is the way, this is how it should be done, this is how it should be done. And Christianity is no different. And so when people get in and they start totally forsaking and throwing away things that Jesus taught, that's what's called false doctrine. And so I see that happening a lot. And then the last thing that I see is the church of Laodicea, where you have this whole idea that successful Christianity is about having the biggest church, having the biggest buildings, the most budget, the flashiest outreach, the flashiest worship band, all of these things. And to really reiterate my point, I don't know, those of you who you may have heard of this because they're very, very popular. Hillsong Church from out of Australia. They really started off as a worship band promoting their music. That's how they got big. And it just started to escalate. And the pastor there, he started, not planning churches, but planning satellite campuses, because he wanted to be in control of those other churches. And he spread himself all over the globe, and Hillsong Church built this mega empire that was in all of these countries and all over the world. Well, come to find out, there were so many sex scandals going on. There was pedophilia, all of these things. And more and more stuff started coming out about this church and how it was just all about money. And it was all about sex and corruption and power. And we see that so much in America and in other places of the world, people using religion for greed and for prosperity. And so this is what I see. Those are the three biggest things that are hindering the church from being what it is supposed to be. And what's going to happen? It may not be tonight. It may not be tomorrow. It may not be a year from now. But Jesus is going to come as a winnowing fan, like he said in the book of Revelation. and judgment starts at the house of God. And for the church in America to be what she needs to be, these sins need to be cleansed. These things need to be dealt with. The hate needs to be dealt with. The religiosity needs to be dealt with. The corruption of money and false teaching. All of this needs to be dealt with, right? Because we are supposed to be a light of love. We claim that, we are representatives of God, and we need to live that out. And we have not. The church in America is a joke today. And that is because of all of these things that I have just mentioned. So it's time for her to come back and to live like these witnesses, to live in love, to live in truth, to live in power, and to realize that the kingdom that we preach is not of this world. We're not about money. We are not about power. We are not about influence. We are not about Christian nationalism. And don't even get me started on that. There's this whole idea that the Christians need to rule the culture and change the culture and Christianize everything. That's not what we see in the New Testament at all. So these are things that have to be dealt with in order for the church to be that powerful witness that she is called to be. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. We'll pick up again next week and looking at some more of this about the two supernatural witnesses. And I don't know where Bethany went. She was up here. I was going to bring her back up. Let me see what happened to her. Y'all bear with me one second. If anybody has a question, oh, look, here she comes. Hey, John, welcome. Hey, Blondie.
Hey, I was listening. It's just I had to put my oldest down.
Okay. Well, I was going to see if you had any questions, comments, anybody else in the chat.
Well, I was listening to what you had said, how things are supposed to be, and did you happen to already kind of mention what we had discussed before the show yet?
I haven't.
Well, I mean, do you think that now would kind of be the time to kind of talk about the things that the bigotry that you've personally faced?
Yeah, a funny story. And yes, PW, I see that question. I see that. Yeah. We'll get to that later. Let me wrap this up. So when was this, Bethany? Was this earlier in May?
Which one? I mean, you've had quite a few encounters of bigotry.
The one with the church.
Oh, yep, May.
Yeah, so I got invited by this church down here in Louisiana, Bayou Sorrel Baptist Church, had invited me out to preach for them, and because they're looking for a pastor and they needed somebody to fill the pulpit. So I sent them in a resume, and they were all good with it. Now, full disclosure, like in my resume, like I mentioned that, I am a dark fiction author. I do YouTube shows. I talk about the paranormal and all this stuff. It's all there in black and white in my resume. So they read it over and they were good with it. And so they asked me to come preach. Well, about 2 weeks before I was supposed to go, I was actually today was supposed to be the day that I preached at that church, Bethany. Interesting enough.
I remember. Yeah.
Somebody looked me up on the internet, and so they saw my beard was a little bit longer. Then they saw that I had a beard and long hair, and that I have that I'm a paranormal investigator, and so they flipped out on me.
And they saw that you had piercings. Now, keep in mind, people, they've never met him in person. They do not know him from Adam, and they immediately condemned him.
Yeah, they told me I was not allowed in their church.
Yep.
I was not allowed to to preach.
Yep.
So
An absolute stranger.
So I said,
And they got a little personal too. I mean, they went out of their way to personally message him, and they said a few other very tongue-in-cheek things, just to make it clear that they were condemning him.
Yeah.
Just based on his appearance.
Just based on the hair. And the
Yep.
piercings.
And you've also had certain people who, I guess, make comments about your anarchy necklace and when you wore that one robe on the show.
Yeah. Do y'all remember when, for those of you who are around, I know PW, you were around, Dustin, and some of the people that are usually regulars when we preach through the book of Enoch, right? And the Ethiopic Church is one of the Christian denominations that has canonized the book of Enoch. And so in honor of that, like I wore this preaching robe and stuff like that. And so I had people telling me, well, I don't even remember what it was, Bethany, like I was doing a seance or something like that.
Oh, some kind of like that you were actually like teaching, and no offense to anybody who practices it, Satanism and all of that, which, respect to anybody, whatever they practice, but that wasn't the goal that night.
Thank you, Elena. And as a Christian too, I apologize for some of the stuff that people have done in the name of Christ. But this is just examples to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Like this type of religious spirit in these things, like it's got to go. It's got to stop.
Well, and it's not to convey, and because I see a lot of people, sorry that it happened, and it is shameful when it happened, but the reason we're bringing it up is not to garner sympathy. It's to say, a lot of times they'll eat their own too. Yes.
A lot of self-cannibalism that goes on in Christianity. So this, as somebody who has given their life to preach the gospel, like this type of stuff has to stop. It is a horrible witness to the world and other people up to what Christianity and the gospel is about. And so like when I say these things, right, it isn't to garner sympathy and stuff like that, but it's also to show that, like, I'm not making this stuff up. Like, I'm not just pulling this out of my rear end. Like, these things happen and I experience it. I go through it. I experience a lot of bad things just for being a paranormal researcher and for writing, dark fiction. And so I've been the brunt of a lot of that. A lot of you out there have been the brunt of stuff like that. So, if you have been through that type of stuff, like I have too, I understand how it feels, and know what that is like. And so my thing to other people out there, like, I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your spiritual belief is. I don't care, what your sexual orientation is. Like, I am never going to treat you like garbage. You're never going to get that type of treatment from me at all whatsoever.
No, we're here we all share the planet. We should be able to learn to get along peacefully and try to accept and support each other.
Yeah.
I mean, things are bad enough out there. I mean, you don't need to find hatred,
Yeah.
especially here, and you won't.
Yeah.
It looks like, because I got my chat working.
Yeah. I'm looking at Paul's comment. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah.
About the Book of Enoch, we did a whole series on that, and I got into the history and how I think it should be included in the canon and why it got left out and stuff like that. And I know there's a lot of people that watch the show, and that's why we went through it, because there's a lot of us out there, and no matter what our religion or spiritual belief is, the Book of Enoch is highly influential, and so it was a perfect thing to start off with. Hey, Hare, welcome in Frankfurt, Germany. Thank you for joining us on our live stream. See if I've missed anybody. I think I've said hello to everybody.
I admit, I'm not getting everybody in chat. Sometimes it's touch and go. I think I saw.
And there's John. Yeah, I see John. Hey, John. I said
I'm
hello
not
to
seeing
you,
John.
Paul.
Paul's gone. Like, I don't know. This thing's being weird on me. So,
You're weird.
no, I'm not. Hello, everybody. Well, yes, I am weird. I've been called that many times.
I see. Rip the Jacket. You're a new person too. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, look, John just commented again. You see that?
Oh, hello, John.
Yep. So you are getting them.
Well, I am now.
Okay. All right. So
See,
we're
it's
gonna.
Clem.
Oh, Clem. Hey, man. What's up? Clem is a guy that I used to disciple way back in the day when I lived in Georgia and was at a church out there. And he and I just got connected again on Facebook after years and years. So glad you're in the chat, man. Thank you for
Yeah, big welcome.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna wrap up here in just a little bit, but we'll be back Tuesday night with Southern Discomfort, and that's when we're gonna focus more on the paranormal aspect of things that I like to talk about, ghosts, demons, haunting, all of that fun stuff. So we'll be getting back into the swing of things. Also be talking about some horror movies and some documentaries that I've watched lately, which, it is worth bringing up here at the end. So Bethany and I have been on a documentary kick lately. And
Oh, yeah, and some of them, the
watched
one,
some ones on some very outlandish cults.
yeah, and the one, the silver woman.
Oh, look, if you have HBO, if you have
Max.
Netflix, go watch Love Wins, Cult of the Mother God. That's all I'm going to say. Go watch it.
Toward the end, it made my stomach churn. I couldn't, and I just ended up just feeling a lot of different emotions. I can honestly say that.
It is just wow. Now, Tuesday night, I'll talk about some of the other ones we've looked at, but this kind of fits more with the theme of Immortal Shadows. We watched Cult of the Mother God, and then the one we watched last night on Tubi, Holy Hell. That was stomach churning as well. About a now here's the difference between the two documentaries, right? The girl in Cult of the Mother God, she had issues, but she was not malicious, right? Her intent was not to harm. This person the cult that they looked at in Holy Hell on Tubi, this dude, his intent was Mm.
Now, I have a question for you. So, you studied some of this in seminary school, yes?
Yes, quite a bit of it actually.
What have they like? Now, did they ever teach any of you in seminary school deprogramming?
No, no. I wish they did.
Why didn't
Um,
they?
I think that's something that requires more of a degree in counseling and psychology, and
Yeah, that
not
makes sense.
everybody in seminary is there to be a counselor or a psychologist. I'm sure that may have been something that they taught in that track, because there is like a psychology track in a lot of seminaries. But that wasn't the track. I went through just the theology, and my focus was on the biblical languages and ancient Near East studies.
What did they like? As someone who has an actual theological background, who has studied this, like, what is your take on a lot of these cult leaders? And like,
Um,
what did they even teach you, like how to approach someone like this?
well, when you're looking at the makeup of the cult leader, there's different things. Okay, some of them, there's strict narcissism. Just they are outright 100% narcissists. Their desire is to control people. Their desire is to have attention on themselves and to be worshipped. It is an extreme form of narcissism, and what they do is they prey on susceptible people who may have been hurt by organized religion, people who may have had a bad experience, people who have gone through traumatic events, people who are looking for a place to belong. All of these cults are excellent, absolutely excellent at making people feel loved and belonged and cared for. And that's the way that they do, and they begin to slowly indoctrinate and brainwash. And the thing too, if you've ever studied narcissists, narcissists are great manipulators. They are great at the chess game. And so when you have a cult leader like this and a narcissist who's able to play on people who have been hurt and wounded, then you have a recipe for disaster. Also, what you see with a lot of people who get into cults, and this is some of the psychology behind it. Now, I don't have a psychology degree, but just from what I have studied about narcissism and its connections with cult leaders and people who get into cults, a lot of people who get pulled into these cults are very codependent type people. They struggle with codependency. And Bethany, you know as well as I do that what happens when a codependent and a narcissist meet? It is a recipe for disaster. And so
Actually, they call them the peanut butter and jelly. Codependents will actually typically gravitate toward a narcissist.
yeah.
And vice versa, a narcissist will look for a codependent. Or
So that's
try
what
to
we see.
create that kind of dynamic. Go ahead.
No, what'd you say about that dynamic?
Or they will try to create that kind of dynamic.
Yeah. And so that's what you have going on. And then you have some other cult leaders, like for example, with the lady in Cult of the Mother God. She had some very deep-seated trauma in her past, and she started really getting spiritual and looking into spiritualism and religion and all this stuff, which is a good thing, right? But her own need for self-validation that she did not get in her family life, in the love and support that she did not get growing up as a child, this is just my evaluation of it, is that's what she was seeking, and she was able to get around a whole lot of people who just totally enabled her behavior. So anyway,
I do want to say real quick before you finish up that, I do have, I don't want to speak for you, Zeke, but I think we're probably on the same page. I have a lot of compassion for anybody who has been in a cult or has believed something like that. Especially watching the documentaries, I like that they take the stance. It's more of a compassionate one. In a lot of these. I mean,
yeah,
it ultimately will come down to the person who has sadly fallen into that, and then the deprogramming, and then asking themselves, what was it that attracted you to that in the first place?
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I have a lot of compassion for just people in general, but especially somebody who's been through that. Hey, Paul, I see your question. Yeah, that is something that I will address Tuesday night, because it is, talking about the classification to help identify the difference between human spirits, or ghosts versus fallen angels and demons. We can definitely revisit that. I know when we first started Southern Discomfort way, back like a year and a half ago, that was some of the things that we had looked at. So we can definitely address that, because there is classification. You have a lot of Christians out there that say everything is demonic, and it's that whole sweep, and I am not of that camp. There's definitely classification. You've got ghosts, you've got demons, you've got fallen angels. So we can address that. That's a good thing. That's a good topic to bring up Tuesday night. That's something we can kick off again and do that. So yeah, that's a good question, Paul. So thank you for bringing that up. That's going to make a great discussion topic for Tuesday night. So I hope you come back and join us on Tuesday for sure. We'll get to that. But Blondie, you got anything else?
No.
You sure?
Was there something you wanted me to bring up?
I don't know. Now, I will say this. So Bethany and I got to hang out for my birthday over Memorial Day weekend. And I know I give her a whole lot of crap on this show about her cooking, and I call her Burn It Death and Burn It with Bethany and all that stuff. But she makes these cookies every time we see each other. What are they called again? What is it?
Well, they're peanut butter blossoms, but the recipe that I use was from a Southern cookbook. It was Stonewall Jackson's favorite peanut butter cookies.
Yeah, they are so good.
I'm not a fan of the person, but the recipe is the best peanut butter blossom recipe.
Yeah. So
And I use Reese cups instead of Hershey Kisses in the middle.
Yeah, remember the time? What did you do? The time you made the Hershey Kisses one for me instead of the peanut butter?
Yes, and the look of disappointment and sadness was just prevalent. I'm telling you, they taste better with the Reese cups than a Hershey Kiss.
Yeah, they do. So she made me some good cookies, and we had fun doing that, hanging out. Me, her, and Emma, and her kids. So we
and
had
my little
a
ones.
good birthday. We had a good birthday. So we will be back Tuesday. So thank you, Clem. Wish me happy birthday. Thank you for all the new folks who came in the chat and joined us here. We appreciate you coming by. We will be back for Southern Discomfort Tuesday night at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, talking about paranormal. We'll talk about classification. Oh, thank you, PW. for wishing me happy birthday. So we'll be talking about that type of stuff on Tuesday nights. Thank you, Yelena. I appreciate it. Thank you all for all the happy birthday wishes. It was good. I'm looking forward to another good year and some more gray and white coming into my beard as well.
You'll be Santa.
Yeah.
We already talked about this, that you would play Santa for the kids next year.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the. I don't know if you want me playing Santa. I'll make them cry.
No, you don't. They adore you.
I know they do. Her kids love me.
They do. Oh my gosh, how many times a day do they call you?
A lot.
Yeah, at work, at home, first thing in the morning. Yeah.
I welcome it. It's fun. So everybody stick around. At the end of the show, we always like to play an inspirational video that Dustin has made. Dustin said you can be the female.
I saw the comment. I'm just glad that we didn't do my intro music either.
We'll do that. We'll do that Tuesday night, right?
No,
Southern
we won't.
Discomfort is where we really cut up, right? Like I like to have fun, on both shows. This one though kind of lends to more serious, heavy tone because of the topics we talk about. But yeah, we'll cut up Tuesday night. We'll play Bethany's intro music.
Well, I tell you what, actually, no, my final thought is, what is the last thought you want to leave everyone with on a serious note before we close out and then segue into the tomfoolery on Tuesday?
I guess one of the things I would leave with is that it is so easy for us to let the horrible things people do, the horrible things people say, skew our vision of who God is. And so my encouragement to people is, don't take your cue, right? Even though, people claim to be Christians or this and that, and they represent God. None of us represent him 100% fully. Don't let the bad encounters skew your vision or your understanding of who he is, right? That's why he's given us his word. That's why he's given us Christ, the full revelation. Let that be your standard, not what a person has done, not even if a person has done something horrible to you in the name of God. People lie. People lie a lot. They do horrible things. They like to twist God, use him for their own narrative. We've talked about that before. So my encouragement is don't let people ruin God for you. I guess I could leave it at that. Don't let people ruin God for you. So stick around. We are going to play this video, Never Give Up, that Dustin has made for us. And I hope to see y'all all back here Tuesday night.
Is this what giving up feels like? I don't know, Tell me, have I lost my mind? Nowhere to go, so far from home. Is this what giving up feels like? I don't know. Tell me, have I lost my mind? So I break these walls and hold